Thomas on the mic, talking life and what's alike. Middle age, it's quite the ride, finding joy and chasing pride. Career dreams and daily grind, funny moments that we find. Letting go of yesterday, making paths along the way. Middle age.
Oh, there it is. We're here. We're back. Hello,
Tim. Such a good song.
I love that song.
You did a great job writing that.
I take no credit.
Oh, you should.
That's a lie.
All right, back again. Back again. We just keep meeting all these awesome people. We're very lucky.
I know, for real. As a reminder for those who have not been here before or who just need a refresher, the Tim and Trav podcast is basically about life in our 40s and transitions and everything in between. And we have an awesome guest that we'll get to here in a little bit, Manoj, with some really incredible insights. It was really cool to talk to him. And, of course, we always have Trav, who's me, and Tim, who's always first. Tim, how are you?
I'm good, Trav. Thanks. I don't know how I ended up being first, but I'm glad you remind people what this podcast is about, because sometimes even I have forgotten what we're doing. So that's helpful for me too. We're going to get into the memory thing in a minute. I want to talk about that, but Trav, I was thinking a lot about this podcast recently, and I wanted to ask you, what would you define as a measure of success as it relates to this podcast? How would you know that we've accomplished all of our goals?
Oh, man, that's a really good question. I was actually talking about fame with somebody the other day, and I think the ultimate level of fame is if you can still go to the grocery store and not be like bombarded, but you still got some cachet. Like maybe one loser approaches us and is like, hey, I know you. I'm one of your 3 YouTube subscribers.
Wow, that would be amazing. You may have to travel far
that
to
and
find
free
that
stuff.
person.
Obviously.
That's interesting. Honestly, I thought a lot about it. I set you up with that question, and I've been thinking a lot about it myself. Can I tell you what my answer is?
I cannot wait, literally.
My measure of success for our podcast would be if Dyson sponsored us. I'm not kidding. Can you imagine?
That would be amazing. Actually, can I change my answer to yours? I don't want to be famous in the least, like at all. Don't recognize me anywhere. I don't want any of that. But free stuff would be sweet.
You're a pretty humble guy. I mean, I would just love to go, let's cut to the Dyson commercial.
I like it. Let's make it happen. You're talking it into the universe. Isn't that like manifesting?
I hope so.
All right. I love it. So speaking of products, do you have any hair care products or anything to share?
I'm going to jump at this real quickly. You know what's funny about this segment is that every time that we talk about it, I feel like, not every time, but oftentimes it comes back to me in the shower, which is a little uncomfortable, but I'm just going to share why I'm saying that.
Okay.
So I bought this shampoo from Costco that it's just amazing. It's like some aloe based, it was on sale. So it's just, why are you rubbing your head? Just wait, man. Let me finish talking.
Keep going. I'm so curious where this is headed.
I was reading the bottle the other day. I mean, what else do you do in the shower? You read your shampoo bottles and whatnot. And it said no sulfates, dyes, and parabens, Parabens. And I thought to myself in that moment, I'm pretty sure I know what a dye is. I've heard the word sulfate before, but I have no idea what that means. Never heard the word paraben.
Really?
It's right on the front of the bottle. Well, have you heard that word?
You've never heard the word? I've heard the word before, yeah.
Wow, never heard it. Maybe I wasn't paying attention in
definition
chemistry.
Of it.
All I'm saying is, it made me wonder how many things are sort of in front of us all the time that we really never pay attention to.
You had like an existential crisis because of parabens. That's wild.
In the shower. Yeah. But the shampoo, like, let me say, the shampoo is, it's not really doing anything for me because it doesn't need to work, but it smells great.
Well, I mean, you checked off most of the boxes for this podcast. I mean, in the shower, check. Costco, check. I mean, what else more do you need?
Yeah, thank you for humoring
I like it.
through that.
So that's what we're here for. I don't have a single thing about hair care at all. I don't. It's the one part I can't contribute to anything. Even this week, I already gave you my one a long time ago.
Yeah, you don't tend to talk. You don't talk during this segment, and that's unfortunate.
I'm bald.
I know, but you
That's
can still
the joke.
Look, you could find ways to incorporate something. You could ask your neighbor about what sort of hair care products they use. You could find ways to get more involved here, and I'm a little let down, frankly, that you are not participating.
You know what? I will do that. That's a great idea. I actually was out the other day with a friend who has an amazing head of hair that I'm very envious of. So I'll ask Andy. Andy will tell me. It's time now for our listener comments and questions. If you would like, before we get going, if you would like to send us anything, it's timandtravpodcast@gmail.com. That's timandtravpodcast@gmail.com. And we look forward and read all of questions, comments, etc. Judge away as you will. Tim, do you have any?
I do, yeah. And it doesn't take us very long to read all the stuff that's coming in because it's pretty much non-existent.
Not a whole lot.
Well, that's not true. I'm getting a lot of texts, and I wanted to share a text that I got from a friend of mine, Hoon, who's a great guy. And I'm taking this one all the way because this is just awesome. It says, "I'm listening now, and your voice is butter cappuccino filet mignon." That, to me, I mean, nobody has ever described my voice that way. But Hoon, I love you, and thank you. He didn't say anything about the intelligence that I bring to these episodes, but he did manage to comment on my voice, so I'll take that.
It was implied. I'm sure. Wait a minute. What was it? Butter? What was it?
Butter cappuccino filet mignon.
Wow. That's some Ben and Jerry's.
Does that make you hungry?
Not altogether.
I would probably eat it.
Yeah, you probably would. All right, I'll go.
So, thank you, Hoon, for writing in. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Hoon. You said that Hoon sent that to you via text?
Yeah, that's correct.
Would you like to give everyone your phone number?
Not quite yet.
Darn it. I thought I was going to get you. All right, so I have one from Robin, who is a friend from Perrysburg. Robin heard about our episodes, or our podcast, I should say, from our number one listener, I think, and commenter, Luann, right?
Yeah. Yep.
The OG Mrs. Cummings. She's beating the drum out there for us in Perrysburg, apparently. And she said, Saturday I was at the Perrysburg Y all alone, in parentheses, it was early, and didn't want any of the creepy true crime podcasts I typically listen to, because, an empty Y at 4:30 a.m. could be the beginning of one of those podcasts. Let me tell you, it was a good thing the Y was empty. My outbursts of laughter and bopping to the catchy jingle would have brought some crazy looks. Thank you, Robin. She went on to say some other very nice things, but we'll cut it at that. Thank you very much. That was very nice. We'll have to talk about true crime podcasts at some point, too, because I'm a little bit obsessed with those myself. But
oh, really? I've never listened. Awesome. But I do want to thank Robin as well. Robin is such an awesome person. And, that was very kind of her to write in. And it shows as well that our Gmail does work.
It does. She found it and it works perfectly. Also, 4:30 a.m. at the Y deserves a shout out of its own. Holy cow. That's impressive.
If you're looking for motivation, that's the person to follow. She is a rock star on so many levels. So, she is up at the earliest hours getting her workout in, and that's super inspiring. I know I'm not able to do that because I'm a wimp.
I get it. But she's clearly
not. No, she's not, but you could have said something
you expect
nicer.
me to refute that?
Yeah, no. So, you didn't even, you just accepted it and jumped on to the next section.
Well, sorry, man. Huh. We got time to keep here, man. I'm not here to refute obvious facts. Again, that's timandtravpodcast@gmail.com, timandtravpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to write in, we do read all of them. We love them, and thank you. And by all of them, I mean I think we've received 5, maybe
that's
6.
Pretty good. One per episode.
Tim will give your Yeah, there you go. Tim will give his phone number out at a later date, so keep listening. Tim, awesome wife moment?
Yeah, got one. So, my daughter came home off the bus. This is a week or so ago, and she was, I guess this was just last week actually. She was sharing that two of her friends were having a little bit of infighting between the two of them. I'm not sure what it was about, but they're third graders, so just keep that in mind when you're kind of thinking about this story. And Quinn was perturbed by the situation. This was not a physical fight. This was just some arguing about something. So I said, well, I'm sure they'll work they'll work it out, and hopefully everything will be okay. And that was sort of it, right? So my wife gets home later in the evening, and Quinn then, as the children do this, they either don't tell me anything. I don't know if this happens to you, and then just wait till Christy gets home to tell her everything, or everything that they've told me, they repeat to her in a more elaborate fashion, right? Because,
Yes.
and then when I witness her respond, her responses are always better than mine. in most cases, right?
Thing, yes.
Christy listens to this story. She immediately recognizes the names of the two kids, knows that their moms are friends, right? So she receives the story, says, Quinn, you know what? I definitely, hear you on this story. And she probably said this in her own way. I'm like putting a little Tim spin on this, but she said, I know their moms are really good friends, so they'll probably be able to get together and make sure that everything gets resolved just fine. So I wouldn't really worry about it too much. And Quinn was totally cool, right? Like it all made sense to her. She trusts Christy, obviously. So what amazed me in that moment, though, I was like, I don't even know who these two kids are. I've never heard their names before. I mean, I've probably heard them like 30 or 40 times, but they didn't, sink in that moment. I don't know who their moms are. I don't know any of these people, right? How does Christy know all of this stuff? How does she find a way to like keep all of this information in her head and, apply it regularly? It's fascinating.
And immediately. Going back to the one thing that really resonated with me, obviously, I know Christy enough to know that she is an excellent mother. Her choice in husband is off the table at the moment, but the kids divulging more or anything at all to the mom, I don't know what that is. I have the same issue. It actually kind of drives me a little bit nuts to the point of being offensive. It's like, dude, I asked you. We were in a conversation and I know you had all this information. Like, why didn't you just tell me, But I think what that goes to is that undeniable bond of mom and child that we just, we obviously are close to our children and we're there for our kids no matter what, but there is that thing that we just will never replicate. So it does not shock me in the least that Christy got all that info and also had such an immediate response and positive response. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is interesting. I wonder if other fathers experience the same thing.
I don't know. timandtravpodcast@gmail.com. Send us a note. I want to know. I want it. We should do like a poll.
That would be interesting. I wish we knew how to do that. I think the thing for me and my children often, what happens for me is that, they ask me something and I just make something up. And so they've come to not trust me. It's sort of similar to most relationships in my life.
Your third grader knows not to rely on you. That's perfect.
Anyways, give me yours, please.
I do not want to make this about me in any way, but I will say, just to point out her exemplary behavior and support. It has been a bit since I have been steadily employed, and that is very strange for me. It's not a great feeling for anybody who's been out of a job, especially when it's kind of out of your control for any length of time. You know that you can take things really personally. You can get kind of down to the dumps. It's a emotional roller coaster that it probably shouldn't be. And also, I'm one of those people that ties way, way, way too much to his job in terms of personal worth. All that being said, the reason that I bring that up is because Kristen, and I think I've mentioned this in previous episodes, but it's an ongoing thing, and I have to step back from myself and my selfish little pity party at sometimes and recognize the support system that she provides is unparalleled. And I can tell you this, I'm probably not the most fun person to live with. Like in general, I saw your face. I saw you jumping on it. Don't.
I'm just going to say I second that. Go ahead. Carry on.
But she has never made me feel that way. She has been, I don't know. I feel weird saying the phrase ride or die, but like if you were to actually define what that is, I would put Kristen's face right there. Like that is the person that she is. And she always has been. This is not a newfound thing of her support. Like my job, especially, it has a lot of, unpredictability and fickleness and all kinds of crazy stuff in the entertainment world. And she has never been anything but an absolute backbone for me. And so that is my ongoing awesome wife moment. I'm sure I will probably continue to recognize that, or at least I should. But, shout out to Kristen for that. Yeah.
But that's a beautiful, beautiful story and a beautiful testament to who she is. I wanted to say two things, if you don't mind. Okay. The first is your wife's name is Kristen and my wife's name is Christy.
Correct.
I just wanted for the viewer or the listener, I wanted to just clarify that those are two separate names. I think if we were talking quickly, somebody may get confused and think we were married to the same person.
Right. No, Kristen, my Kristen would have killed you long ago. Yeah.
That's so true. It's a good thing Christy does not have any weapons. I think so that was my first point. I just want to make sure everybody knew that.
Good clarification.
My second
for sure.
Thank you. I knew that was important. My second point is, there's this theme that we've heard from previous guests and others that about the power essentially of a partner. And it doesn't have to be a spouse. It doesn't have to be, it could be anybody. But,
Sure.
And how much at times in our lives we rely on others to help us get through things. And I think it's really interesting and awesome that she is, and not that she wouldn't do this, right? Like I know her and she's a rock star, but that she's serving in that role for you in this time period is really, really cool. And the unfortunate and tricky thing about all of it is that everybody goes through their own seasons, right? When you don't know when it will come to an end or how it will transition into something new. So, but I think it's wonderful that she's there, and you're a lucky guy.
Thank you. I agree. I think we're both very lucky. You and me, I mean.
I think our wives are
our
not.
wives are not,
Yes.
That's fair enough.
All right, man, let's jump.
All right. Yeah, let's jump. So something awesome you've read, seen, or experienced recently.
I have two things. The first is, I'll go with the less important one first. I was at Costco last week walking through. Dude, have I already talked about Costco?
There's a lot of Costco talk, but you know what? Let's just talk about this real quick. Let's just put it out on the table. We are Midwestern East Coast dudes in our 40s, happen to be Caucasian. I mean, like Costco is essentially we are their target market. If Costco isn't hitting the two of us doofuses, they are missing the mark by far. So, the fact that it's just two dudes on here in their 40s talking about Costco is just like, all right, that's more white noise, literally. Anyway, keep going.
All right. Well, look, I didn't have to say Costco. I could say that there's a store in my town that is selling an inflatable hot tub.
Everybody would know that's Costco.
Yeah, they probably know.
Did you buy this? Did you buy this hot tub?
No. I didn't buy it. So I didn't buy it. It's $500, and it looks like really I'd probably be the only one who would fit inside of it. Even though the picture on the box has four people. It was nice to see though. I've seen images online. I think if I own this hot tub, I probably would sit in it about once. And then my other issue is that, and maybe we could segue later into this, but we used to have one of those pools, like the plastic
Oh,
They're
yeah.
kind of like, they had a steel frame. They were above ground.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we bought that actually during COVID, and it was brilliant. That was Christy's idea. It was like 15 feet, just a big circle. Abby ate that thing at the end of a summer. As I was trying to clean it and take it apart, she ripped into it with her mouth and had to throw the whole thing away. You know, I don't want to talk about it right now because I'm going to get angry. So the reason I wouldn't buy an inflatable hot tub, however, is because Abby would probably eat it. So that was, I just thought it was interesting. I'd really love to know if anybody actually owns one of those and if they use it. I'm not a hot tub guy myself, but anyways, it's just interesting that it's there. I mean, I don't know. Would you get in a hot tub in your backyard?
No, I don't think so. We've been to Airbnbs and stuff before that have had hot tubs, and I get it. I understand it, like in terms of it being relaxing and so forth. It just kind of skeezes me out. It's like an indoor water park. I'm not like, I don't know.
That's not for you.
There's something weird about it.
Fair enough. All right. So moving on from that, my other just awesome thing, and this is a shout out to all of our listeners, not necessarily a shout out, but just a thought. You ever get a piece of mail from somebody that sort of comes in randomly, and it's just sort of a nice letter, a hello, thinking about you, hope you're doing well, congratulations on something. I think what I'm suggesting here is we need to try to keep that art form alive. My mom is really good about writing letters, right? And I think it's a dying art form. I think it's incredibly, it's an awesome opportunity for people to just send a letter to somebody. Tell them you're thinking about them. Tell them how great they are. You know, what's a stamp cost now? Like 40 something cents?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. So we got a letter in the mail recently from somebody who comes from way back when. You know, I was just super touched by her kindness and generosity. And it's so simple. So that's my awesome. That's something
really nice.
Awesome that I experienced recently that I think we should be doing more of. And I'm going to try to do more of that as well.
Can I ask, the person who sent you this letter kind of out of the blue, which is very touching, what generation are they? Like our parents' generation? Are they?
Yeah, parents' generation.
Okay. So I have this theory that like we were actually doing a letter writing campaign, and we all we had like 10 people over at the house, and we're writing letters to encourage people to vote. And you know, there's this whole great thing called Vote Forward and everything, and they set everything up for you. But then the whole point is that within the letter that you print out, you actually are supposed to write a note within it. And everybody was basically roughly in our age group. And all of us were like, I've done 5. My hand is killing me. I don't write anymore. And so I have this theory that like if the people from our parents' generation had shown up, they probably would have smoked us because they still write letters. They actually use a pen and paper to write things down. Like even my to-do list isn't on pen and paper anymore. You know, like it's been years since I've, oh no, yeah. And I'm a person who like prides myself on my handwriting. I was writing these things, they were like garbage. It was like, oh, this is wild. I don't write anymore. And I think you might be onto something to get everybody back in writing shape.
A lot of things in our world are cyclical, right? Maybe this will bounce back. I agree with you 100%. When I write letters, my hand hurts because I still do a lot of writing with a pen and paper. That I have to type what I'm going to write first onto like a draft email, and then I copy it onto the paper because I can't for some reason it just doesn't click when I'm sitting in front of that, be it a letter, be it a card, whatever it is, which is kind of depressing.
Is it because you type so much faster?
No, I just type it because I want to be able to see a draft. I just want a draft.
Oh, I see. Okay, so it's like the self-assuredness.
Correct. Yeah. All right, man, talk to me about your awesome stuff.
My awesome thing actually happened this morning. Late last night, I was doom scrolling and I saw that Chris Christopherson, the actor, musician, veteran, advocate, all these different things in the world, he recently passed away. He passed away last night as of the recording this. Which, he had lived a extremely full and very long life. I think he was 88 years old. And it was one of those, like, it's a person I had seen in person. I'd seen him on a studio lot before, and I was kind of in awe. And he's just like an old school, like he's the Highwayman, like he's an old school cool dude, right? And I was just kind of briefly thinking, like, wow, like he probably impacted so many different people between his advocacy and his as a veteran, and he's pretty outspoken, and he's kind of one of those old school guys. And then today I was looking through things while I was eating lunch, and I noticed that there was a remarkable number of people paying tribute to Chris Christopherson on my TikTok as musicians. And they didn't have to say anything. They didn't have to write a message or anything. They were literally just covering songs from Chris Christopherson. And I thought it was kind of like, what an amazing lasting imprint you can leave on somebody as an artist. I just thought it was a really beautiful human experience. I think it's something that kind of gets overlooked in our doom scrolling, click to click world. It's like, well, no, there are people who are so impacted by what you do that they spend hours of their lives listening and learning and replaying and practicing all the things that you put so much of your life into. Like, that's amazing. That's really cool.
That is cool.
I thought it was really neat.
Is it bad that I don't know who this guy is?
Oh, no, it's not bad. You can't know everything, but
because I know
I promise you do. You know so much. You're so smart. I promise after this, though, I will send you like one link of a song or his picture or something, and you will be like, oh, yeah, that guy.
That's great. I often find ways to like bash social media. I don't think I've ever been on TikTok. I just don't enjoy engaging in those platforms. But when you tell me stories like that, Trav, I do. It does foster some hope and some joy, because it's, that stuff previously wouldn't have existed, or the ability to do that that quickly would just never have existed. And now, look, you're being exposed to all these talented people who are, aligned with you in your feelings towards this artist and the work that he did. That's awesome.
I don't necessarily live vicariously through social media, but I view social media as a tool. So like TikTok for me, as maybe I'm too old to say this, I don't know. And I'm not on all of them. I'm not on Snapchat or anything like that. But TikTok for me, I personally think is a really interesting tool for storytelling. And that can be your own personal story. There's advocates all over TikTok. There's all kinds of things that people share on TikTok. Some of it is not for me, obviously, but other things like the musicians, like the comedians, some people, there's a sports journalist that I follow who just has these amazing behind the scenes little quips, or little stories like, hey, when I was writing this book, this is what happened. Also too, I think there's something about my attention span where it is kind of an amazing, like, wow, you have to be really efficient in telling that story because it's only so many seconds long. So you better get it out and quick, and it better be engaging. And so from a storyteller standpoint, it's like, oh, wow, that was really cool. Like, some people are really good at this.
I love it. I would like to, I'm going to throw this out there and we'll see if it sticks later. But Christy and I both wrestle tremendously with screen time and screen availability for our children. And that may be something worth talking about in the future.
I agree. We should actually get somebody who knows what they're talking about that.
Exactly. We should get some people on here who know what they're talking about.
We do have some, but we've had several people, thank you. And there are other people in the pipeline, buddy.
Our guests are awesome.
Okay, our guests are awesome. Before we get to that next guest of Manoj, a note from our sponsors. You want to kick this off?
Oh, cool.
All right, there we go.
That's cool.
Tim, would you please be so kind as to introduce our guest?
Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet because he's a rock star, just like, our previous guest as well. Manoj is a terrific guy who has a really interesting history, going from a growth and progression in the corporate environment, now into a very different space. And he's going to tell us more about that. He just went back for, I think, maybe his third or fourth degree and is in the process of opening up a practice in the community with his wife. So he's just a great guy and has been a great friend. And he can tell us a little bit more about his journey. So let's bring him in. All right. So here we are with Manoj Thomas. Manoj, it's good to see you and good to have you on our illustrious podcast. You succumbed to enough of my nagging and you agreed to join us. Thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. There's this illustrious group. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Well, it's great to have you, and I'm really excited to hear more about your experience, your journey. Certainly, I know a fair amount about it, but what you transitioned into most recently as well with your wife, and so maybe you could just give us a little bit more background on your professional experience, and where you're at today, and what got you there.
Okay, well, I don't know how long you have. You have a 3-hour conversation. We'll start now. I started out in engineering school, a small little engineering school called Stevens Tech in New Jersey. Did my undergraduate there, went to work for Exxon Research and Engineering, doing computer stuff. I was a little bit of a geek and a nerd, and so this is when computers were just starting out in the late 80s and 90s. The PC revolution was just sort of starting. Went to work for Exxon for 3 or 4 years. Left there, went to work for Merrill Lynch. Did my grad degree while I was working for Exxon. Thankfully, they paid for it. So went from oil and gas, a process-oriented industry, into an industry that's all financial services, and that was eye-opening. Stayed there for 3 years. Went to work for IBM for a year. Then spent 20 years, I'd say in my early 20s, jumped around a little bit, got a little bit of exposure to 2 or 3 different industries, and then stayed at Microsoft for 20 years. Left there in 2017 and went to work for Bank of America. Working for the chief technology officer there, and then left Bank of America in 2021 and semi-retired. So, Tim, to your question about what am I doing now, I'd say I'm somewhat gainfully unemployed. Thank you for your taxpayer dollars. Not collecting any of it yet, but at least not collecting Social Security yet. But I say semi-retired because I don't think I could sit still. So when I retired, quote unquote, I joined my wife. We went back to school for 3 years. Just graduated this May. Went back and got our degrees in counseling. We just felt there's such a huge need in that space. And my particular interest or bent is in sort of the coaching side of things as well as counseling, but working with executives, professionals, folks who live in corporate America, work in corporate America, or even in small business, and helping them think through a lot of the things that hold them back, as well as we do a lot of family and marriage stuff, and super rewarding. But to your point, Tim, earlier, it's definitely been a massive pivot from technology to, something, went from like the analytical side of the world to working with people 100% and feelings. And so had to reprogram my brain a lot. It's not done yet.
I hear that. And Manoj, I mean, I think something that fascinates me too, earlier in your career or with Microsoft especially, you were managing global teams.
Yeah.
Right. So you were on the move often. What was that like for you at that point? Was that exciting? Was it something that you enjoyed as part of your responsibilities?
I did. I love it. And my wife knows after every 3 or 4 months I get the travel bug, and she's like, okay, you got to get on a plane, get your butt cheek somewhere and just go. And I'll join you sometimes, kind of a thing. I loved it. I think at the height of my time at Microsoft, I was covering Johnson & Johnson, which is one of the reasons we live in New Jersey where we do. Their headquarters, the world headquarters is here. And I think I had 17 global organizations or teams in 17 different places. And so I was on the plane like at the height, it was like every 3-4 weeks I was on a plane somewhere and then back for 1 or 2 weeks and then gone again. And it was exciting because I love culture, I love cuisine, I love interacting with people from all over the world. And so that was the thrill. My wife always reminds me that whenever it's going to snow, she knows I'm going to be on a plane and she'll have to shovel it because that was what she and the kids had to do for many, many years. It seemed to be that I would be the weather forecaster whenever I was on a plane in the winter. It always seemed to snow. But it's a challenge because from a family perspective, and we do stuff with a church that we help launch, and so with those kind of areas, it became it's just a stressor. You have to be intentional about a lot more things when your time is constrained like that. So it's one of the key learnings from that season of life, at least.
And also, you got to miss shoveling, which is, if you can ever strategically do that. Sorry to your wife and kids, though.
Yeah, I was going to say that was part of our own counseling background. We have to work through all of that resentment that she built up.
That's fair.
Yeah. So
no, she is
all
fantastic.
no doubt. With all that global travel, you must have met a lot of really amazing people, which I know excited you. I know you enjoy community and being around people. Were any of them as interesting as Trav and myself?
That becomes a really tough question.
Yeah.
Maybe like one or two in the UK, but other than that, I think you guys got it beat.
Yeah, people are often surprised that two guys from Ohio could be so cool.
Tim obviously doesn't read the comments or the reviews.
I haven't been paying attention. I want to go way back, if you don't mind, real quickly to maybe one of like your earliest positions. That could even be as a young man, right? And maybe something that you learned at that point in your life, or somebody that you met that really had a significant or profound influence on your professional career growth. Does anybody or anything come to mind?
Yeah, I don't remember the guy's name, but I did a summer internship. I did multiple summer internships while I was doing my undergrad studies. One of them was at AT&T. At that time, it was called AT&T. It's no longer AT&T. It's all been split up. But it was AT&T Bell Laboratories, and one of the directors over there told me something I've lived to this day. He said, "You don't need to know everything. You just need to know how to find it or who to talk to." And when I do coaching, especially when I had the teams at Bank of America and Microsoft, I used to say, context is super important. Understanding what about a problem or about an issue, whatever it is, right? Context beats a lot of other things before you start spewing out content. So context and connections before any kind of content is what I used to tell my teams, and I think that's something that I took from that guy. To this day, I don't remember who he was. I just remember he was helping out some of these summer interns, and he came and gave a talk, and it just stuck with me that you don't need to know everything. You need to know who to find it from and where to get it. And then when I joined Microsoft, it was information at your fingertips was one of the sort of the mottos. And again, it's not about knowing everything. It's how do I get information at my fingertips. And in those days, you had to type. Now you just talk into, Siri or Google or Alexa or any other bot.
That's super cool. That's a great insight.
It's phenomenal insight for sure. And then when you look at sort of your career as well, looking back on that, were there any pivotal moments that really stand out for you that sort of shaped the trajectory of where you are today, or what was to come shortly after it happened?
Yeah, I'd say that there were two major shifts. One was a shift from going from a technical role to a more sales, business-focused role, I'll call it. And at that time, there was an article, there's a tech news rag, if you will, called Gartner. They do a lot of analysis. And Gartner came out with an article, I don't know, I think it was in 2005, 2004, something like that, saying, and as we're looking forward to the 2010 and sort of the end of that decade, they were saying that we've got a lot of people who are MBAs who are, what they call generalists, an inch deep but very, very wide. And then you had people who were specialists who were, only 1 or 2 inches wide but really, really deep. And they posited in this article that what the tech industry needed and what business needed are people who are versatilists, people who could do both things. And that sort of spurred my thinking, along with some other career things that were going on at Microsoft, for me to take a big step and move out of a very technical managing director role of running a consulting practice to running a sales team and sort of starting out in sales and technical sales and then running a sales team. And that shift was profound. I wish I'd made it 5 or 10 years earlier. I think oftentimes we get categorized. I was a geek and a nerd in high school, and we get pigeonholed. And all along, at a tech company like Microsoft, you've got a lot of folks who are very technical, and all the people who are doing sales were the business folks who came from MBA school and or business degrees, right? Not necessarily deep technical degrees. And I kind of broke the mold a little bit, had to go through a whole bunch of hoops at that time because, there's a trust barrier of can a technical person really lead sales or know about sales. But to me, that was a dramatic shift. And I had a great manager who sort of believed in me, and she advocated for me, which was super, super important at that time. And I'm so grateful.
So you're talking about that shift, and then you're talking about, people coming from different educational and just kind of almost social level backgrounds. where does your grad degree fit in there? Because you said that you got it while you were still working, or in the workforce, I should say. Where, timeline wise, where did your grad degree fit into that shift?
It was well before. So in the 3 years that I spent at Exxon, 4 years that I spent at Exxon, they paid
Mhm.
for my grad degree. So I got my grad degree in telecommunications management. So that was my
Gotcha.
first forte into, it was sort of a dual, half technical, half management type degree. And
Gotcha.
then it was after five more years later is when I joined Microsoft. And
Mhm.
then probably another 5 to 7 years into my career at Microsoft is when I shifted. So probably 12 years after my grad degree is
Gotcha.
when I shifted from tech into sales. And then I went and did an executive MBA while I was at Microsoft, and that was the second big shift. I went from managing Johnson and Johnson and sort of the healthcare space into managing financial services. I
I
felt
see.
like I had a little bit more of the chops to do that at a larger level, and so managed one of the top 17 accounts for Microsoft, and that was a journey. It was
I'm
fun.
sure. That's amazing. Did
And how
you?
many more? Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
no, go ahead, Tim.
Well, I was just curious how many more degrees you're planning on accomplishing.
I've got
Because I think you have 3 or 4 already.
yeah, I've got four now, and I don't know.
Wow.
Um,
I,
I don't
I
think there's
can't
any
wait to
more
follow you.
education. But I do believe that challenging yourself is super important. And so
Mm,
for me, I like to learn. I just never thought that I'd be learning, or switching from a tech focused analytical mindset to a feelings focused mindset. But that shift was unsettling at the core of my being, because I just
mm,
felt like I was in kindergarten with 20 and 30-year-olds in class. And I really felt inept. And so in some sense, it's a humbling experience to realize that you could be at the top of your game in one aspect of sort of the expanse of what you could do with your time and energy, and you could feel like a kindergartner in another. And so it's humbling, but it was great. I look back at it and say the last 3 years were transformative for us.
I have to speak to that real quick because I do think it is quite profound what you have done, and I don't think a lot of people do that for many different reasons, myself included. I mean, you took an incredibly significant pivot, right? To use the word again, from one world, right, growth in the corporate sector into um, the mental and behavioral health space, right, the wellness space, and it's just amazing. And I love hearing you say that, like, it was uncomfortable, which makes complete sense. And I think that you are a shining example for so many people of that when you stick through it and you keep that grit alive, you can get there. And I know, just based on my own personal experience, that you've been a tremendous asset to me in guiding me and helping me through some of my own ordeals. So it's awesome, what you're doing now, and I just have a lot of respect for you. So I apologize for going on a segue there. And Trav, I know
No,
you
it's
have
okay.
more profound questions to ask, but I just had to say that.
No, I actually think it's kind of interesting too, just as a person who just met you today. I wonder if that humbling experience and that kind of uncomfortable experience being going from where you were from to this very emotional, based mental health space. I wonder if that actually helped make you an even better practitioner in the mental health space. Do you know what I mean? It's like you came in and you were so vulnerable that you actually probably, I don't know if you've been able to see that yet in your daily work now, but I bet it actually made you even better at what you're doing now.
Well, I hope so. I think that when I was going through the graduate program in counseling, a lot of the folks did that, undergrad, and they were pursuing that as a career.
Hmm.
Um, for me, it was not a career. It was more my wife wanted to do, and I wanted to join her on the journey after 30 years of her supporting me in my endeavors. And I said, hey, I'll do that. Little did I know, I'd never written a reflection paper before in my life. I've done introspection, but never had I had to write, 2 pages single spaced about my feelings. That
Sure.
just seemed like, I wrote bullet points and directives to people and business plans. So that was part of the unsettlingness of, like, how do I even understand what's going on? And I'd say that
Hmm.
has transformed me. My wife says I'm a better husband or a different husband than I was 3 years ago. And so I credit that to just sort of the introspection that space or that, you know, that field of mental health where you do look inward, and it's so necessary.
Yeah,
I
that's
just
really cool.
realized there were like blind spots that I had in many areas of life that I was just completely unaware of. I
Sure.
didn't realize how I was sort of, I didn't, you know, never cratered relationships, but I felt like, you know, I could have done whole lot better
Sure.
early on if I knew what I knew now.
That's really cool. That's a
I've done
very
a lot of
profound
that
takeaway.
deep diving into a lot of Travis's issues, and
Mm.
my list is very extensive.
It's
Uh,
deep. It's super
yeah,
deep. He's still
yeah.
going,
Hmm.
actually. Yeah. It's,
Voluminous, right?
yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's I'm just kidding. No, can you speak a little bit more about? I know you kind of spoke to it earlier in the conversation, but what you and your wife are doing now, and what that operation looks like, because it's really cool.
Yeah, so my wife and I, we graduated together in May of 2024, just a few months ago. We launched Catalytic Counseling and Coaching, which is the two of us. You know, we want to be a catalyst for change and transformation in people's lives. The specific area that we're most interested in is in marriages. We just see marriages falling apart across the ecosystem of relationships. And then we've seen, not in our own family or direct, you know, family members, but we've just seen the carnage when we were doing youth ministry and collegiate ministry, the carnage of divorce and other dysfunction that then sort of raises its head generation after generation. And so that's the area that we're passionate about. I'm passionate about the coaching space and sort of tying in the mental health things that executives need to focus on. Especially where there are blocks, you know, their lack of understanding or unawareness of blind spots limits them in whatever their career progression. Not always, but many times it limits them in their career trajectories.
Sure.
I felt like if I had known what I know now, I felt like I would have been a much better manager
Mm.
Mm.
in the years that I was at both B of A and Microsoft.
That's funny. I was actually just going to ask if there was any retrospective thought in terms of how you would take that experience that you've had now and the education that you have now in counseling, how you would do things differently. Obviously, I'm not going to ask anything specific, but like, is there something that you would tell yourself, let's say Manoj at age 30, as a manager or something? What would you tell yourself now knowing what you know?
I think the biggest thing is learning how to be present. I was a very task-oriented person, and so I would be thinking, my head thinks about the future. And so in business constructs, you're thinking about results and how do I get to the next level with the team or with our individual performances or team performances. And it was always focused on, not always, but you know, many times heavily focused on results, quarter results, semi-annual results, annual results. And in a managerial role, it's so important to be present and to listen to what the individual is saying so that you can help unblock things that are outside of your control necessarily, right? There may be mental blocks that they've got. There may be other areas where they're just not thinking big enough. And if I were just a little bit more present, I think I would have been a much better manager. I think I got better over time, but you know, just again, the youth is wasted on the young, they say, right? So if I knew what I knew now and I could rewind myself 20 years, 30 years, that's what I tell myself is just learn to be present, a lot more
Sure.
present rather than just thinking only about results or primarily about results.
Mm-hmm.
I,
Well, in
I hear
management,
that.
management requires so much experience anyway. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like a good
yeah,
manager doesn't pop right out of school, and so give yourself a little grace too. There, if
yeah.
I can.
Thanks.
But my question is, do you think that? And I hear that, and then you embody it. I've known you now for some time, but in the Manoj that I know is that individual. Do you think at the same time, however, and I'm just curious for your feedback on this. Would you have been able to deliver the same results if you went back in time with that mindset, or do you
Um,
think they may be better?
I think we could have been accelerated results a little bit more because I
Really?
think that there were things where I wasn't a slave driver, but I definitely had my head thought about results
Yeah.
and thought about getting the results. And like I said, I've always had great manager reviews from all of my teams. but I think I could have just done better. And I receive what you said, Travis. Take it with a grain of salt or with some grace. But in hindsight, I look back and said I could have been a much better manager if I could have helped them individually, folks on the team, unblock things that would help them perform better, where I
And you
wouldn't
think
have to be
about the
talking about
ripple
results.
effects.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the ripple effects of that for their own professional development and growth. That's beautiful insight. I have a fun question, and I love to ask this question, and then I love to try to answer it before you can, if that's okay. So
He's really good at this.
I see if my guess is right. So if you could jump into any profession right now at this point in time, just waving a magic wand, what would you choose and why? Now, my answer for you, based off of just my who I believe you are to be, I think you would be a professional triathlete competing in the Olympics.
Wow. Okay. We're doing a half marathon this weekend, so that's the first part of our journey.
All right, there you go.
It's our fourth one together, and it's something that we decided to start doing to stay healthy as we get older.
Which is awesome.
But a triathlon is on my bucket list. I don't know how to swim very well or beyond 20 feet, so a lot of work that I need to do there.
So this question is kind of silly because you just started something new, but take a stab at it if you don't mind.
Yeah, the area that I'm most passionate about now, we're doing stuff with the mental health space, and it's fun and rewarding because of what I said earlier. There's an immediate satisfaction that I see rather than waiting 3 months or a quarter or a year for some results to come out in corporate America. The one area that I do think has some incredible, if I were to leave and do something else professionally, full time, I would do something in the healthcare space that's tied to AI. There are so many of these tech startups that are doing just phenomenal transformational work, and we're just at the cusp of the beginning of this transformation in the healthcare space. Across, AI's got such a big buzz across everywhere. But specifically in healthcare, there are so much. I mean, you probably see this when you go to any one of your healthcare providers, the forms that you have to fill out online, and it's the same repetitive stuff. One doctor doesn't know the other test you took. There's just so much opportunity for innovation, and I really do think, I hope and pray, and I'd love to invest time and energy into looking at how AI and how other tech enablements can help accelerate the transformation.
That's really cool.
You probably know, like the healthcare costs in the U.S., we spend the most on per GDP on healthcare, and we have the worst, well, maybe not the worst, but for all of the major developed countries, we have a pretty low standard of healthcare compared to our peers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great insight for people listening about an emerging trend or market that will continue to evolve.
Oh yeah, if I were in my 20s and with a tech degree and had, this is where I'd go get a tech degree and go get some kind of a bio or some kind of a degree that understands physiology, and there's so much opportunity.
Well, I wouldn't put that past you. I would assume that if we interview you in 5 years from now, you'll probably be doing that.
Yeah, who knows? From your mouth to God's ears, maybe.
You did a really good summary in terms of where you've been and why you're here and who you are today. So you actually answered a lot of the questions already that I had, but we do want to ask our impact question, if that's okay. And I'm just going to read it, and then you can take a minute if you need to. It's not the easiest question unless something readily comes to mind. But
and for $5, I'll answer it for you.
Oh, look at that!
Yeah. You're so cheap. All right, name one experience that has had a profound impact on the person you are today.
One experience
can also be a person, if that helps.
Yeah, I was going to say a person that impacted me is a guy by the name of Mr. Hanna. He was my 12th grade high school computer science teacher. And like I said, I was a little bit of a geek trying to figure out what I was interested in. And 11th and 12th grade, I took a bunch of computer classes, and he just opened my eyes to the possibilities. And this is when, computers had what they call tape, and you had to load the operating system on tape before floppy disks and before hard drives. And so it was the early part of the computer industry, but he gave me a passion for just I had a problem solving kind of mindset. And so applying that energy and time into writing code and solving problems there, it just challenged my brain. And he just infused a lot of enthusiasm because he loved what he was doing. And so he's the one person that I look back and say, if I didn't get on that sort of track that at that time, I wouldn't have gone to the engineering school I went to, and then sort of the other domino effects probably wouldn't have happened.
I love hearing about the impact of educators. That's something that is just, so profoundly cool. And I think
they're so
sometimes it gets
underappreciated.
glossed over. Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
No, not at all. No, you're so right. They're so underappreciated in so many different aspects.
I love that. Yeah, shout out to any educator. You're right. Trav's mom was an educator. My mom's an educator. Both of those women didn't do a great job with the two of us, but they were great in the classroom.
They tried. Right. They really tried.
Manoj, it's been awesome to have you. You're just an incredible guy. Certainly we wish you and your wife the best of luck as you begin this new venture. It's so wonderful. You've touched so many lives, myself included. And I'm just really grateful to know that people like you are out there doing incredible stuff and helping others and maintaining that motivation to do that too. So thank you. You shared some incredible insights with us today that, we'll both take with us, and I think our listeners will take with us. And, this has really been a pleasure to have you on our podcast. So thank you for joining us.
And Manoj, can I ask too, can you just give a plug for people who are in your area or who can seek you out if they'd like?
Yeah, sure. The organization that we started is called Catalytic Counseling and Coaching. You can email us at connect.catalytic@gmail.com.
Awesome.
Do you do virtual as well as in person?
We do. We prefer in person, but we do in person. We do virtual as well.
Great.
Okay.
I like to use a whiteboard, and so it's much easier to just do it.
That's fair. That's fair. Very cool. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Manoj. It's been awesome.
Great. Thank you.
Very insightful.
This was great.
All right.
Well, have yourself a great rest of the afternoon, rest of the week. All right.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. Bye now.
Bye.
See ya.
All right. That was Manoj. As he mentioned, he just founded with his wife Catalytic Counseling. And they can be, we'll put all these links in the notes and so forth below, but they can be reached at connect.catalytic@gmail.com. So thank you, Manoj, for sharing all those insights. He's a cool dude.
Very cool dude. What do you mean when you say we'll put these in the notes?
Well, Tim, when you click on a podcast, there's this section below the podcast, and it's a place where you can put text.
Hold on.
And that text down there can actually include links. Do you know what a link is?
Trav, you could have just said it's the section below
show notes.
The podcast. Golly. No, see, I thought that you knew something that I didn't, and that you were hiding very, very precious information from me.
No, they're show notes. They're just this. It's the little section below the show. So, Manoj, we thank you again. Tim, please fill us in. How are things with Abby the dog?
Well, did we get any feedback? I'm still kind of thinking a lot about what I brought up on our last episode in terms of the dog share program that I'd like to create. Did we get any feedback on that?
No, and I'll tell you why.
How come?
It airs tomorrow.
Oh, well, that's not going to help.
That's episode 105. As you're listening to this, folks, it will be episode 105 coming out on
October 1st. Yeah, October 1st.
October 1st.
All right. Well, with that in mind, I'd love to hear from people to see what they think about that. Here's a question I'm going to present to you. We have a couple things coming up with family, right, where people are coming over or, a birthday party or something like that. And I don't know if you guys have to do this, but sometimes for us, it's just easier to board Abby for the day or sometimes even, an overnight because you got to pick her up by 7 p.m. if you do the day thing. Because some of the kids are, don't really like dogs. Some family members don't like dogs. That drives me insane. Do you do that? And I guess if so, how do you feel about it? If not, otherwise I'm going to have to put her in a room, right, for part of the day and just sort of isolate her. And that also makes me feel terrible because there's some kids, they're afraid of her. And again, she's a lovely dog. She's not vicious, but she gets really, really excited. So what's your take on that?
Well, let me ask real quick because I think I know the answer. But how big is Abby? Like how much does she weigh?
She's like 55 pounds.
Okay, that's roughly right around the size of Sierra, and so you and I are kind of in a similar aspect of that. I know some people who have really big dogs don't even need to board them or get rid of them because like they're just so big that the kids like it like crests beyond being afraid of them. It's like no, that's just a giant tipper. But I think actually we're in the sweet spot of certain ages, especially where kids get a little freaked out, especially if like Sierra, if Abby's high energy, it can be like too much. You know, it's like they're right in their face. So I sympathize and empathize completely. A lot of it though for me is it's safety and comfort of everybody coming over as well as for her. Like when we had that letter writing party, for example, we put her up here because we needed to keep the gate open because we were all outside. And if she bolts, man, she's gone. And we are fairly close to some pretty decent sized roads. Like it's pretty dangerous if she were to get out. And I don't ever expect any guest to adhere to our like door and gate policies. You know what I mean? It's like, how would they know that? So I hear you. It's never a great feeling, but if it's for the betterment of everyone involved, including Abby, it's just I think that's just kind of one of those uncomfortable dog ownership things. But I'd be curious what people who actually know what they're talking about would say. We should ask Kate.
Yeah, I'm going to get Kate on here one of these days because I'm going to first express my feelings towards her. You know, she did start this whole thing off. Sure. Kate's one of my favorite people in the world. I love her so much, and I think she's an amazing human being, but she set me up, and I'm going to have to let her know about it, you know?
I think it's actually the best troll job I've ever heard of against you, and I actually want to buy her a drink because of it, maybe several, because I just think it's amazing.
I'm joking. Well, that's good to know that I'm not the only guy who kind of wrestles with this, because you know what happens, right, is when you have these engagements, now this birthday party or whatnot, it's costing you another $70, right? Like to put the dog away for a night or something. And whatever, it's not the end of the world. She goes and has a great time, but I'm kind of like, if I'm going to be spending $70, I'd rather give it to like a nonprofit in need that can use that money for something else.
If you put her in a room though, like with the example that I have with Sierra in my office, which is the attic, does she freak out?
She'll be pretty hyper for a pretty extensive period of time. Yeah, I mean, just because we hardly ever do that, right? I mean, it's not something that we do often. The thing that's really wild about our guests is when they come over, after she gets over like that 5 to 10 minute window of having a new body in the house, she's really cool. But it's just totally. She is out of her mind for that first segment, and it really freaks people out.
Honestly, we've now grown accustomed, and it doesn't work for everybody. It especially does not work for larger groups of people. But we have now tried to kind of quote unquote train our guests. When they show up, they actually ignore her. So don't look at her, don't engage with her, don't do the high pitch like, oh, it's so, you know, like I'm the first person to do that to any dog that I see. It's like, oh, are they friendly? Like, don't do any of that stuff. Look right over top of her. Don't even acknowledge her, and she will be totally chill. You know, she's going to run around and jump and everything if you do kind of like feed into it, if you will. And it's a really, especially if you're not a dog owner, I've found it is really difficult to like not acknowledge these, you know, 50, 60 pound animal that like wants to come greet you and is barking and is happy and blah, blah, blah.
You know, you're making me think. So when our guests come over, I typically meet them out front, outside in front of the door, and I tape dog treats to their back. Maybe I should stop doing that.
Here's your meat necklace.
maybe that's why she's getting so hyper. I never thought about it that way.
It might be, you know, it might be. Yeah, that could be it.
You know, she keeps jumping up on their backs, and I tell her not to, but. Well, that's helpful, Trav. I'm glad to know. In this, you know, this is actually one of the first times that I felt that you and I sort of saw eye to eye on something as it relates to our animals, to our dogs.
You know what? It's kind of one of those old adages where you have more in common with people than you think. After 43 years, everyone, you've now witnessed a breakthrough. Congratulations.
Well, I'd love to. I'd love to hear people's feedback on my, proposal in the last episode. I think it was very, very sound and savvy. I think I'm onto something. I'd be really curious to see if people agree or disagree.
You might be. I don't know. I'm not one to shoot out on a good idea. Episode 105, everybody, if you have not already listened, go back and listen to Tim's genius dog idea.
And by the way, can I just say, in the last episode too, you were talking about using puppies to pick up dates in college. I would never stoop that low.
All right, everyone, you're getting a little insider knowledge now because I cut that part out.
Oh.
I sounded like such a jerk. I was like, oh, this is going away.
That's funny. Cut this out.
So there you go. That'll be our extended director's bonus episode.
All right, man. Good episode.
All right, Tim, it is always a pleasure.
Oh, likewise. Yes, it's great. And it's fun to bring on all these really great people. Thank you, Manoj.
Yes, thank you very much, Manoj. So,
yeah.
All right, man. Thanks very much.
All
Thanks,
right.
everybody,
Thanks,
for listening.
Trav.
Tim and Trav podcast. All right, we'll see you.
See you.
Tim and Travis on the mic, talking life and what's it like. Middle age, it's quite the ride. Finding joy and chasing pride. Career dreams and daily grind. Funny moments that we find. Letting go of yesterday, making paths along the way. Middle age. Middle-aged mayhem breaking free, finding out who we can be, laughing, learning all the time. Tim and Travis in their prime. Every step a brand new plan, older, wiser, still we stand. Navigating through the years, sharing stories, laughs and cheers. Free, finding out who we can be, laughing, learning all the time. Tim and Travis in their prime. Every step a brand new plan, older, wiser, still we stand. Navigating through the years, sharing stories, laughs and cheers. Middle age, enjoying the fun, middle age has just begun. Tim and Travis lead the way, every episode will slay.
We all look very good in our headphones. That's odd. I don't really care. I'm just sharing that with you. What are you wearing? What is that, a sweater?
Dude.
Yeah, I would get rid of it. You know who told me that? Chris. You don't seem to care about that. I don't know why you don't care about that.
Because nobody watches this.
Yeah, good call.
I'm going to try that again.
Maybe I should move to Ohio. I could sit right next to you.
You know what? I would love nothing more, but you have to keep your hands to yourself.